I don't want to go into any deep introspective analysis or get into some deep dives with numbers and talk about all the stats, but I just want to have a conversation here. Because the Montreal Canadiens, after starting off the regular season with a very impressive run, I think it was like 8-2-2 or something like that. Yeah, it was like the first two overtime losses, or shootout loss, I guess, against Vancouver in the Toronto-Vancouver series, and then there were the 8 wins, and then they had a few losses sprinkled in there as well. They were on top of the NHL. Maybe not literally, but in terms of the feeling, the emotion, we knew what Marc Bergevin did in this offseason. He built a team that was looking to be very hungry and looking to be very successful. And a lot of people, myself included, said things like, oh, Montreal made the most improvements out of all the teams in the North. And only playing against teams in the North, hey, the Habs last year were really good. They had a very positive record against only Canadian teams. So who's to say the Canadiens with a better roster in 2021 would not just go out there and spank? And that's kind of what we saw at the beginning of the year. As we noted, they were first in the North by a long shot. Toronto was losing games to Ottawa, and Toronto wasn't being all too consistent. You had Vancouver bouncing up in there with a few wins. You had Calgary, Edmonton kind of getting some wins off of Vancouver as well. And Winnipeg was out there getting off to somewhat of a slow start. But for Montreal, their start was ballistic. And just like Dale Weiss said all those years ago, so many wins, so many successes at the very beginning of the year, but sometimes that just isn't enough. Now the Canadiens are in a spot where if you take a look at their last 9 games spanning back to February 4th, they're 2-5-2. Meaning that in the most recent 9 games played out of a possible 18 points they could have gotten, they only have 6. Which, if you do the math on that, it is a .333 win percentage. And that's not good. That's really not good. We've been seeing these losses for the Canadiens where, firstly, they're playing inferior opponents, but they just don't look like the better team. Or the lineups and the actual chemistry on the ice, the cohesion, it's not there. Some would say it's because the coach is not changing up any lines. It's because he's not going out there and putting his team in the best position to win. Well, I don't want to make it seem like it's the end of the world here, but we just saw Dominique Ducharme and Alex Burrows' first game behind the bench as the Montreal Canadiens coaching staff, and they blew a 2-0 lead. So, yeah, I didn't watch the game first and foremost. I am just kind of going off of the stats and the highlights and all that. I didn't watch the game yesterday because it actually would have bled into the Canucks game, and the Canucks game is my main priority as a guy who does live here in Vancouver. Also, there was the regional blackout too, so I wasn't actually able to watch the game, legally speaking. So I'm just kind of going over the hearsay and all that. But the Montreal Canadiens lost 6-3 after being up 2-0 to a Winnipeg Jets team that's just been putting on the Jets and getting a little bit hotter as their games have gone on. And if you go over the quotes, talking about how the Habs have played and how the Habs are playing, here's the press conference from Dominique Ducharme after yesterday's loss. Take a look at the comment here. We cracked. We cracked mentally. We cracked physically. And I guess physically is a good way to put it because Josh Anderson, oh boy, hopefully that guy's able to come back all right because he did leave yesterday's action. But the Habs ended up losing a game where a lot of people were pointing their fingers, not necessarily at the coach, but ironically, it's some of the more important pieces of the organization. And I say important because they quite literally are the most paramount assets the Habs have on their payroll at the moment. Carey Price and Shea Weber. Again, I'm mostly going off of the highlights. I'm going off of the quick reviews of what I've been seeing. I haven't watched the game in full. But when it comes to the Canadiens' defense and the Canadiens' ability to contain and suppress opposing chances, that falls on your D-core. That falls on your goaltender. And when you have a D-core that has not really been all too great as of late, led by a guy like Shea Weber who just isn't looking like himself as of late, you kind of force yourself into a position where you're kind of needing to rely on that Carey Price to keep you in. And it's gotten to a point now where Carey Price isn't really being like Carey Price. And I guess you could say, oh, it's because if you converted this season into an 82-game schedule, this would be about November. And November is usually when Carey Price doesn't do Carey Price-like things. Okay, cool. Okay, maybe it's because Carey Price is in that early-ish season form and he's bound to come back, right? Well, as we said, the Canadiens, they're 2-5-2 in their last 9. They've been losing games that they probably should be winning. And even when they do get good goaltending, you have Jake Allen over there, who is a backup, probably one of the more expensive backups, but hey, he's been great. Even when you have a Jake Allen performance that is good enough to bail out a team, stopping breakaways left and right, you still don't find ways to win. And that's kind of where the crackdown is coming here, not just with the team, but with the fan base and the people that support this team. Ducharme kind of said it nicely. They cracked mentally and physically. And I think so many people watching last night's game, because even though I wasn't watching it, I was out at the mall. I was kind of scrolling through Twitter as things were going on. People were talking about, oh, Armia, great. He's out there getting 2 goals. Thomas Tatar's back. Let's go, baby. Romanov's getting assists. Let's go. But as things go down, it's like, of course, the Habs are in this state now where they're just not the same team like they were before. And it's kind of funny, isn't it? How a team that beat Sidney Crosby and the Penguins last year in the postseason, that added so many more pieces to get better, was a lot more cohesive, and there was actually a lot more unity behind every play they made at the beginning of the year when they first started playing with each other. Now, after the chemistry is supposedly there, and if it's not supposedly there, it's supposed to be there, now they're playing a completely different style that has not been winning them games. Teams have figured them out, and on nights when you're playing teams that should be seen as inferior because the talent level and the potential of what these players can do today is inferior, like Ottawa, for example, you're getting outworked by them. You're getting outmatched. You're getting every single ounce of Ottawa Senators hockey thrown at you, and you're not stepping up to the plate and containing that. You're losing puck battles. You're giving it right to the opposition. You're giving them breakaways in overtime. That has been a very big adjustment for many Canadiens fans watching this team over the past few months go from the team that was beating Vancouver over and over again to now being 4th place in the North Division. Take a look at the standings. Remember these a few weeks ago when the Canadiens were on top of everybody with a considerable lead too? Now they're just 2 points ahead of Calgary. And yes, they have games in hand, but there still is room to be concerned here. It's been 4 losses in a row. 4 losses in a row, and the team's on top. Toronto's won 1 in a row. You have Edmonton. They've won 5 straight. They have been kind of harping on my Vancouver Canucks. Yeah, I know. More about that later in the day. And then you have the Winnipeg Jets. They've been heating up as of late. 3 wins in a row, with the most recent one coming against Montreal. So I want you to tell me in the comments below, not really anything on how to fix this or what is the ultimate plan or who should be fired, who should be traded. I don't want to talk about any of that. I just want you to tell me in the comments, how are you feeling? Because if you clicked on this video, I would assume you're a Habs fan or you're a Canadiens fan or you're somebody who's roughly following this team to some extent. So if this is impacting your ability to view this team as a fan, please let me know in the comments. The comment section is your stage. Tell me how you're feeling about this hockey team, because I know as a guy who has not been watching all the games because regional blackouts exist, but when I do watch the games, I'm seeing different specks of talent and different pieces of very good skill from guys that I like. I've come to like Nick Suzuki and Tyler Toffoli and the skills that they have, and all the other guys as well. There are so many individual parts of this team that are so well polished and great. It's just when they come all together, it's a lot different today than it was a few weeks ago. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. That's kind of how I feel about it. Obviously, I'm a lot more miserable watching Vancouver than I am watching Montreal, but I want you to tell me in the comments what you're feeling about the Habs right now. Do they have it in them to come back? Actually, no, that's a mute question, because yes, they do have what it takes. It's just whether or not we will see that come out. That is the question. So tell me in the comments what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. So that Trolls 99. And bye.